Do you ever feel like a hamster on a hamster wheel, not getting anywhere new? Perhaps you've hit a plateau that has you asking, is this it? Have you accomplished all you've set out to do in life and are not feeling as fulfilled as you thought you would? It is normal at midlife to reassess what's working for you and what's not. It's also normal to want to reclaim your time, your energy, and your joy. Let's make the best out of the second half of our lives by having more fun, experiencing more peace, and feeling more joy. If any of this resonates with you, then this podcast is for you. I'm Bayles Bartley. Now let's get ready to shift our shit. Hello there, Bayles Bartley coming to you from the Mindfulness Center. I'm excited in this season to talk about my book, Reset, 6 Powerful Exercises to Refocus Your Attention on What Works for You and Release What Doesn't. So today we are on exercise number 3, which is understanding the present. So the last couple podcast episodes, we've looked at the past, honoring the past and knowing what works and doesn't work from our past. And then we looked at envisioning the future. So we kind of have a roadmap of where we want to go by the end of this year, which oftentimes can happen sooner than the end of the year. And exercise number 3 is really, really crucial to all of this because oftentimes we have a little voice inside of our heads. Very rarely do people not have this voice, but most of us have this little voice in our heads that has this ongoing narrative. And we're kind of just, recapping everything that's happening around us. Now, if you listen to this voice, or you may already know, is the voice being critical of your ongoings of the day? Or is your voice more encouraging and saying, way to go, you did that? Most often I have found that people's inner dialogue can be very critical. So we're going to talk about that today and understand that. And looking at limiting beliefs, so this critical voice in our heads that we talk to ourselves with, because we might be able to fake it with others and not be critical of others. But the reality is, if we're really critical of ourselves, a lot of times it spills over and we're also critical of others. So even if we don't want to be. So we're going to look at, first thing is nonverbal communication. So when we're communicating with ourselves or others, even a higher power, oftentimes, when we get into this critical mindset where we're judging ourselves, right? We spin in sort of a negative energy, if you will. So over 90%, I've read this differently over the years, but where we're at this point, it's like crazy high. I've seen it from 93% to 97%. Let's just say over 90% of what we communicate to others and to ourselves, even a higher power, universe, whatever you want to call it, is our nonverbal communication. So it's not necessarily the words that we use. What matters more is how we say it, how we present ourselves. Sometimes you don't even have to say any words, but just a look can say a lot. So it's the nonverbal communication is our tone of voice, our volume of voice, our facial expressions, our body posture, and our hand movements. So you can say to somebody, I love you, and yell it at them and have a mean face and grip your hands together in fists. And you're saying, I love you. But it's communicating something different than if you have your palms open, your face is relaxed, and your voice is calm, and you say, I love you, right? Same words, very different nonverbals. So part of this, what we're going to look at today, this exercise, is most about how do we talk to ourselves? Okay. Now, I have a little, I don't know, cheat sheet, handy little thing. It has a hand. So you have 5 different spokes of this hand, right? And the thumb is the critical voice, the critical parental voice in your head that says, why did you do that? I can't believe you did that. What were you thinking? Things that we might have heard from our parents that just slip out. Perhaps we've even said those things as a parent to our kids, but it's that critical parental voice in our head. So that's our thumb. So the pinky, let's go over here to the pinky because the thumb and the pinky work together a lot. The pinky is the little kid in us that is hurt and lonely and sad. So oftentimes when the critical parent shows up in our minds as we're thinking, that tone, we are speaking to, inevitably, the little kid in us that, didn't know better, that tried something and failed, and now is sort of getting emotionally beat up by that critical parent voice in our heads. So if you notice yourself stuck in a place, sort of a negative place, a really sad place where you just feel like you keep beating yourself up and you're that little, hurt and lonely kiddo, the chances are that you also have a very loud critical parent voice speaking in your head. And we're not talking, about schizophrenia here. We're just talking about how we narrate our day or how we speak to ourselves. So if you're driving down the road and you've kind of checked out and you miss your turn at a street, a stoplight or a street, do you say, damn it, why did I do that? Gosh, I always miss that. I was checked out. And you kind of beat yourself up for missing that street. The reality is it's really not that big a deal, right? My 3 things about if something's really a big deal to worry about is anybody bleeding to death? Is anybody dying? Or is anybody in the hospital? You missed your turn, you go to the next one and you reroute yourself. So instead of beating yourself up, being critical of yourself, that critical parent, which just feeds the hurt and loneliness of the little kid inside of us, we can just say, well, okay, there that is. I just, missed my turn. Okay, well, let's reroute and go to the next thing. So it's not that you can't notice, right? Mindfulness is really about noticing and about awareness. So we're being aware of how we're speaking to ourselves, especially if we're stuck and we need to reset and do things differently. We really need to be looking at our nonverbal communication, especially to ourselves, because that affects our whole outlook oftentimes. Okay, so then let's move on from the thumb. And we have the pinky, and then we have our pointer finger, which is our nurturing parent. So you have the critical parent, you have a nurturing parent. The ring finger back over here by the pinky is our playful child, our free and playful child within us, right? So that's fun. We want to be free and playful at times. And then our middle finger is our best adult self. So oftentimes we want to be our best adult self. That's what we're shooting for. And throughout different scenarios, we may show up as the free and playful child and we say, yes, let's go have fun today. Or we're the nurturing parent again to ourselves of like, wow, okay, you did that thing and perhaps it could have gone better. We'll try it differently next time, right? So you have the opportunity to try out these different roles. But when you understand that the critical parental voice in your head is constantly emotionally beating up that hurt and lonely voice in your head, that little kiddo, the tiny kiddo who didn't know better, and now the parent is sort of just berating the kiddo, we can choose a different tone of voice. We can step into the nurturing parent voice and we can say, oh, okay, yeah, you missed your turn. No big deal. We're just going to go to the next street and reroute ourselves. We're going to make a U-turn, going to go back to that street. Not a big deal. You tried your best. You checked out. Okay, people check out sometimes. We're going to try it, differently. So that's you nurturing yourself, right? So that ultimately, you are going to be your best adult self the more that you're balancing out and noticing and being aware of these voices in your mind, that how you're speaking to yourself. Now, what can also happen is if you find yourself on the weekend or at night where you just are like wanting to lay in bed and do nothing and you feel guilty about that, right? Like, or you have a limiting belief in your mind that I need to be productive. I need to be doing something. We're going to talk about shoulds in a moment. I should be doing something differently, right? The little kid is like, I'm tired. I can't do this anymore, whatever. So that little kiddo, right, might want to just curl up in bed. Not a bad thing. However, that can kick in the critical parent, voice that's saying, what are you doing? You're going to get depressed. You're going to get stuck in this, fetal position in bed and you're never going to get out. You need to get up and go do something. Go do those dishes. Go do that laundry, whatever the thing is. So you can see how the critical parental voice and that hurt and lonely kiddo voice really are strong with each other. If you can move upwards and find a little bit more free and playfulness in that child voice, or, the nurturing parent, right? Have a balance of that, ultimately be your best adult self. Oftentimes with best adult self, I kind of imagine it as almost a little bit robotic. You're kind of like in that very logical, rational place where there's not a lot of emotionality to it, because oftentimes critical parent and that hurt and lonely kid are really emotional and there might be some drama that's happening. And if you want to kind of step out of that drama and just go to what is, just what are the facts right in front of you. You missed your turn, you were checked out, you're going to go to the next street and you're going to reroute yourself back to where you had intended to be. That's your best adult self. You're just noticing what is, not beating yourself up, and, moving on, letting go and moving on. So, okay, we've talked this to death now. Let's talk about shoulding all over yourself. Okay, so there's an exercise in this book, exercise 3, talks about how have you been shoulding all over yourself. Now, if you can think in your mind, and you might can think about this of like, what have you said in the last 24 hours or so, or, as you notice the next few days, when the word should comes to your mind, you're going to remember listening to this and you're going to remember, oh, I'm shoulding all over myself. If there's one word I would ban out of, the English language, it would be the word should, because the should puts a pressure on us. It's usually a limiting belief. We can change from using the word should to using the word could, which gives us more options. Because oftentimes when we have a should belief in our head, like, let's say I should go to church on Sundays or Sunday mornings, I should go to church weekly, let's just say, right? We then feel something about the fact if we're not going to church on Sundays, right? So that might have been a message that we got. So this is the exercise, is you recognize your shoulds, and then you try to remember where you heard that. Did you hear that growing up from your parents? Did you hear that, from church? Did you hear that from, teachers or schools or coaches, whatever it is, or, I should weigh less or whatever the thing is. Like, that's a big one for a lot of people. And who said that? Society maybe says that. Maybe a parent said that. Maybe a friend said that. And then thinking about what you want to believe instead. So now, if you're listening to this, likely you are a grown-ass adult, okay? So this is time for you to get your shit together, to shift your shit, and to decide what you want to believe instead. So if you want to say, I could go to church on Sundays, I don't really feel called to go to church right now. So I'm going to give myself permission to not have to go. And if anybody else gives me a hard time about it, that's on them. I'm not going to worry about it. Now, I know that's easier said than done, because there's a lot of emotional attachment to this idea of other people are going to get mad at me if I don't do this thing, right? Or other people are going to have something to say. But this is where this is an exercise that we have to keep coming back to over and over again. It's a practice. But you get to decide as your grown-ass adult self. If you're over 18, it's time for you to decide what you want to believe instead of holding on to limiting beliefs that oftentimes you were given at some point during your upbringing. So shifting shoulds to coulds. The shoulds are black and white thinking. The shoulds are limiting you to two options. I should do this or I shouldn't do this. So if you aren't doing it, you're probably beating yourself up, right? You're thinking, you're feeling guilty. You think I should be doing this, but I'm not. Black and white thinking. Whole point of mindfulness center is that's very judgmental, is this black and white thinking. The whole point of mindfulness is to move into that rainbow of options, to have more options, to move away from that judgmental thinking and to see what all the options are. So the coulds of, I could go to church today, or I could go to church tomorrow, I could go to church next week, I could go to church in a year, I could decide not to go to church, right? There's more options. So when you choose one option, you choose what's best for you in that moment. And if it works, great. Go forth and conquer. If you decide, well, I chose that and didn't quite sit well with me, you have an array of other options to choose from, so you can choose something else. There isn't that sort of, I've chosen the wrong answer, and now if I choose this other one, is I shouldn't have done that. So shoulds are limiting. So move away from shoulds, move towards coulds. Look at what all your options are. Be curious. What are all your options? Okay. So these are all exercises in the book. There are, little pictures to show you how to look at this. There's a few other exercises in this chapter. One is also called the energy pie. So you have a circle and you look at where is all your energy going to right now. And you slice up that pie and you say, okay, 50% of my energy is going towards work. Feels like 50% of my energy is going to kids and home type stuff. So when are you sleeping? When are you taking care of yourself? When are you doing things that are also needing to feel you? So the other piece is looking at the energy pie, the circle that you want to have instead. What would be a better balance of your time and energy? And that's, looking at how you can balance things in a better way. So this is us focusing on the present, understanding how we're talking to ourselves, trying to be more kind and gentle with ourselves, and moving away from the shoulds and moving towards the coulds. I hope this episode was helpful for you. you. If you want to find more about us, sign up for freebies on our website at mindfulness-center.com. Take care.